Hello, and thank you for joining our Activating Governance for Office 365 and SharePoint Users webinar. I'll be one of your presenters. My name is Simeon Cathey. We've got Chris Bayot and Jason Blair joining us as our special guests today for this Content Panda webinar. If you have any questions, you can post them via Twitter using the hashtag Content Panda webinar. We'll also have a Q&A at the end of this webinar. And I have to say, I'm very excited by the number of people who've joined today. We think this is a really important and useful topic, so we want to thank you guys for joining. I do have one question that's come up so far. I'm going to just take a quick look here, and it says, is anyone speaking right now? Well, now we're speaking. It looks like most of the people who've registered have joined, so I'm going to go ahead and just get started here. The first thing I want to do is kind of cover our agenda. Our agenda today, we're going to do a little Content Panda intro, give you some interesting facts. Synergy, our partner, will jump in and talk about what they do and why governance is important. They brought a really great story along today about a customer and their experience, and then we're going to do a demo of how we can deliver that governance with Content Panda. Then we'll have some time at the end for questions and answers. So as you're listening through the webinar, take some notes if you have any questions, and we'll address those at the end. So I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is Simeon Cathey. I'm the CEO of Content Panda. I'm very passionate about getting the most out of SharePoint. I was on the original SharePoint team in 1998 at Microsoft and was the release manager. So my job was to make sure that SharePoint was ready for public use. I've been working with customers after I left Microsoft, and I've learned a lot about how people actually use SharePoint. And that's why I think that this topic and what we're going to cover today can be really useful for folks who are either considering rolling out Office 365 or SharePoint, or already have made the investment and want to get more out of it. So I'd like to have Chris and Jason introduce themselves as well.
Hi everybody, I'm Chris Bayot from Synergy. I'm the Pacific Regional Manager, and I've been with Synergy for about 9 years now, working both as a senior consultant and as the manager for the organization out here in the Pacific. And I've worked with a number of customers and lots of verticals, and really enjoy working with the governance piece because I think it's so critical and there's a lot that we can offer. So I look forward to talking more about that. Jason.
Hi, I'm Jason Blair. I'm a Senior Solutions Consultant with Synergy. After the first of the year, I will be with Synergy for 17 years. I am a huge advocate of SharePoint technologies. I am not only an architect and a consultant in the SharePoint space, but I do SharePoint training for end users, power users, and IT folks. And governance is certainly one of my favorite subjects, so I'm really excited to be presenting today.
Awesome, thanks guys. So, yep, got it, thanks. So we're all excited today about this topic. Synergy and Content Panda are kind of a match made in heaven when it comes to SharePoint and Office 365. We've kind of, with all of our experience working with real users, power users, and IT folks, we're always constantly trying to drive innovation. So we're always trying to rethink how can we deliver SharePoint more effectively. Today's topic will cover sort of governance, training, and support to really help drive user adoption, which is a big challenge in a lot of organizations. With millions of people all over the world using SharePoint every day, we think that there's that it's pretty awesome. We've seen amazing solutions built and amazing transformations of business process and the way people work. But we think that there's still areas for improvement. So we want to cover some statistics for a minute. And some of you who are on this call probably will really get and have probably experienced some of this. Now, these statistics are real. Third parties have gone out and interviewed and surveyed many companies, hundreds and thousands of users to come up with this. So the first one I want to share is the number 52%. This is the percentage that a national organization called AIM, they went out and did surveys and found that 52% of organizations who are really challenging or have had challenges rolling out SharePoint, one of the main causes for that is users are introduced to SharePoint without governance or without any training. So this is a big opportunity to do the right thing, to help your intranet and usage of SharePoint grow. Now, even if you've taken the time to go train people and you've invested in really looking at the business and putting together good governance, it turns out that when somebody reads those documents or they go to that training, if they don't use that knowledge within 24 hours, they lose 70% of that knowledge. It just cognitively falls out of their brain. So imagine, users who get trained, or you do some communications, or you hold brown bags, or you send out links to your governance document. If they don't get to SharePoint or start using SharePoint in maybe weeks or even months, you can imagine all that information just gets lost. So we end up with the users who spend an inordinate amount of time just searching for the right information. Now, the 2.5 hours is the average time spent per day by knowledge workers searching for the right information. That's not just SharePoint. That's all kinds of information they need just to do their job. But a portion of that, if you've rolled out SharePoint, is definitely spent kind of trying to figure out, gosh, how do I, and fill in the blank. Now, the problem with this is people who have been trained or know they should understand this information, they don't feel very good about calling IT, or maybe they don't remember how to log into the e-learning system, or so what do? They go out and they start searching the web. So this number here, 0, is the number of people who like asking for help. So getting them the right information right where they need it is a really important part of your SharePoint strategy. Now, Synergy's had some really great experience over the years rolling out governance, and Chris kind of mentioned earlier how she's very passionate about that and has seen it work really well. So I want to kind of hand over to these guys and have them talk about who they are and their experiences with governance, so that you guys can get some good inside information.
Thanks, Simeon. I appreciate that. Yeah, governance is something that's near and dear to Synergy as a whole, and Jason and I in particular. I'll tell you a little bit about Synergy first. We're a global organization, so we have offices all around the world. Gives you the best of both from a customer perspective, because wherever you are, there's probably an office not too far away. I'm located in our Pacific region here in Hawaii. Jason is out of our headquarters office in Westport, Connecticut. We've also got offices in London, England, across Australia and Singapore, and even in South Africa. So we do cover the globe, and we specialize in business solutions across all verticals. So looking at our customers, you can see that we work with federal government, we work with the banking vertical, we've worked with HMSA and done lots of work there. But one of the things that's really exciting about the work that we've done is how we've been able to help our customers fine-tune what they need to do with SharePoint and really come up with business solutions that give them results in the workplace. And having the right guidance around that, having the right governance around that is really critical. And Simeon, you were mentioning how you really like to work out of the box and find innovative ways to do things. And that's where Synergy was coming from with our governance solution. Having a governance document is great. It gives you some guidelines, but it's not really practical. So we were trying to look at an innovative way to deliver a governance solution to our customers that would be current, that would be useful, where it would be easy to find information. And so we came up with a governance site in order to do that. And Jason, I'm going to let you take it from here and talk a little bit more about how Synergy specifically works with governance and why we think it's so important.
Thanks very much, Chris. So regardless of the vertical, as Chris mentioned, Synergy works with a lot of different verticals, and whether you're in a risk-averse industry or whether you just have an investment in technologies, a lot of companies struggle with the concept of governance. A lot of people see governance as scary or as a set of rules that prevent them from performing certain tasks, and businesses that launch platforms like SharePoint without governance in place often struggle and regret the decision to move forward with governance. So this particular slide is about a large oil equipment manufacturing company that Synergy did business with. They have offices all around the globe. Their headquarters are in Houston, Texas, perhaps unsurprisingly, given they're in the energy field. They had a very heavy SharePoint adoption around the globe. And to put it in the words of their IT VP, they suffered from extensive organic growth. They put SharePoint out there to the business, users started adopting the technology, and a few of the facts about that organic growth kind of really defined what sprawl means in the SharePoint context. So they had 4 separate versions of SharePoint when we started working with them, from 2003 right through to a new 2013 instance. Across those versions of SharePoint, they had 165 web applications for various business reasons. A lot of them were duplicates that they just weren't aware of because things weren't well documented. Within those web apps, they had almost 7,000 site collections. I think the exact number was 6,994. And within those site collections, they had well over 25,000 team sites spread across all different versions of SharePoint. And within those team sites, they had accumulated a fairly large 4.7 terabytes worth of data. IT struggled to support and manage that infrastructure. Obviously, user experience was vastly different between the different versions of SharePoint. And that's an example of what can happen if there isn't governance in place. And we don't see governance as a set of restrictions so much as a set of, basically an enabling tool for businesses that allow them to get the most out of their technology investments. So another good way to find out whether or not your organization needs governance is to talk to your help desk. So, one of the biggest pain points in SharePoint, hands down, is support calls related to permissions issues. End users and business users don't generally understand how permissions work, so that ties up IT resources, handling things that really should be handed out to the business. Document management, SharePoint is an awesome document management tool, but if it's not used properly and there's no rules or guidelines or best practices, it often becomes a dumping ground, and there winds up being duplicate content, all the things that happen when we don't have document management in place. As Simeon alluded to, when you have 52% of your staff being completely untrained in SharePoint, a lot of times the help desk becomes a dumping ground for the how do I questions. When you talk to anybody in risk or legal, you'll often find that they have grave concerns about the content that exists in SharePoint. And when you start asking about compliance, most organizations or businesses fall under some compliance or regulatory control. And without governance, really what compliance do you have? There's really no way of knowing in any comprehensive way what information is out there. So, I think those are some of the driving factors behind why governance is a really important tool, and some of the reasons why we at Synergy have, and working with Content Panda, our partner, are looking to deliver a good governance solution that's accessible to anybody, anywhere. So part of the SharePoint governance plan itself is really a lot of topics that cover all areas of the business. Some basic governance principles that are defined by your business continuity plan, your business goals and objectives. You want to have, governance should be a living, breathing entity. It shouldn't be a static piece of content that you write and hand over to the business. So you have to establish roles and responsibilities to maintain governance as your business evolves. You have to make sure that you have a communication strategy, and that pertains to rolling out new functionality in SharePoint, managing that functionality, any new features that are being deployed, any new team sites, and making sure that users are informed about what exists and how to use it. Managing change is a really important part of governance, so making sure that you understand what changes are needed and having a plan for implementing those changes. Obviously, risk management is a big component of governance, and making sure that you're mitigating the risk that you have by leveraging the features inside of SharePoint. Information architecture. So earlier I talked about that large oil and gas manufacturing organization. Their information architecture was completely unmanageable. There wasn't a single person in that business who had any idea where information was in SharePoint. So making sure that you have a plan for information architecture and that it's scalable and adaptable as your business and your use of SharePoint grow are really important. Just sort of a counterpoint to risk management is benefits realization. SharePoint brings an awesome and powerful tool set to the enterprise, so making sure that you're leveraging that technology to the greatest effect and maximizing your ROI on SharePoint is a really important part of your governance strategy. And maintaining and reviewing that strategy. So in other words, how are we maintaining the architecture? What's our business continuity plan? What type of backups? How are we supporting the users and the infrastructure? And maintaining that plan as business rules change. So, those are all components of a SharePoint governance plan. Some of those do restrict users from doing things, but most of them are enabling tools and best practices and guidelines to help users get the most out of your SharePoint intranet or extranet solution. So when we looked at governance as a solution for businesses, we realized that it had to be dynamic. It had to be something that evolves quickly. It's easy to maintain. You want to make sure that you don't need special skills to maintain the information in the governance plan. A lot of people see governance as an IT-centric responsibility, and I completely disagree with that perspective. I think it really should come from all areas of the business across many disciplines. It should be easy and inviting. It should have a good user experience for the users, and really should incorporate best practices as well. Again, it's not just rules about what you can't do, but it's also the easiest ways to do things and how to gain efficiency through that technology. So it really needs to be accessible and readily available and easy to maintain. All right, so I think we're getting to the point where it's kind of time to show you guys surfacing governance in SharePoint. So Simeon, back to you, sir.
Awesome, thanks Jason, that was great. So I want to start off the demo with showing what a sort of a mock-up of a company intranet. So you guys will probably recognize some of the pieces of this. I want to dive into the governance solution that Synergy's kind of put together. Have them talk a little bit about that, because we mentioned this sort of living, breathing, easy to manage and dynamic governance experience, something that changes as your business changes, as your users become power users and want to get more out of the platform. So I'm going to switch over here to my browser and surprise Jason and Chris, but I want to have you guys talk a little bit about how and why we've implemented governance on this demo site. So before I get there, this is an Office 365 environment. If you have on-premise SharePoint, we work with on-premise SharePoint as well. So everything that you see here will work in both situations. In this mock-up of an intranet, we've done a lot of implementations, hundreds of implementations for companies all around the world. You have kind of the usual suspects. You have your home page for your intranet, where you maybe do some employee spotlights and company news, and maybe even a kind of a company events calendar, things like that. There's usually some human resources, stuff that employees just need to get their jobs done, or to take advantage of benefits, things like that. Sales and marketing is a usual suspect. Legal. Now, if you're really leveraging SharePoint for some of its best features, giving people a place to collaborate around projects is another kind of obvious one. We'll dive into that a little bit. But I want to show you how we can take, and I know Jason said that IT is not the best to necessarily drive governance. You really want to bring the business entities in and have them talk about and learn about and then author policies and best practices around how SharePoint can fit their business best. So I'm just going to go over here to our IT governance site. So we've taken that 80 or 120 page governance document and we've made it easier to manage and more accessible. Jason, can you maybe take a few minutes to kind of walk us through this site? Maybe you can tell me maybe things to click on so we can kind of show people what a sort of a modern and matured governance plan or implementation of governance plan looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Simeon said, we were looking for really a dynamic way of getting this information out. When you have a large document, 80, 100 pages, 120 pages, not only is it intimidating for users to read it, it's not like they're going to print something like that out and have it readily accessible. So we wanted to make sure that governance was easy to maintain, that it's searchable using SharePoint technologies, that we incorporated some of the SharePoint technologies to make governance itself more accessible and easy. So really the foundation of that was building a couple of team sites with all of the governance elements present. So instead of presenting the business that we do governance engagements for with a document, we provide them with a site that has all of their defined policies and procedures in place. So a lot of users don't really know what governance is, so we kind of start off with a governance overview right on the home page, and some of those just link out to different pages that talk about the different SharePoint roles. So within a business, there's a ton of different roles in SharePoint, and really people want to have an understanding of that. Some people may be ambitious and want to skill up in SharePoint, so we talk about the different roles that are present, whether it's end user, power users, site administrators, site collection administrators, and some of the SharePoint specialists like designers and developers. So those SharePoint roles are defined in terms of what the expectation of those roles are, what types of training that you need for most of those. We also, on the pages, we link out to different training resources so that users can get up to speed right within the context of what they're looking at. So, you know, we tried to design this in a way that walks a user through the different elements they need to skill up or perform their specific SharePoint role effectively within the context of that business. So we also, right on the home page here, we have a simple, couple line definition of what governance is. We have some best practice links so users can jump out to different white papers and resources that are available. And on the quick launch on the left-hand side, the really hot button or big topics that people look for when they're using SharePoint are really surfaced right there on the quick launch. Things like the best practices that are available, training, how to request a site in SharePoint. So to prevent site sprawl, a lot of organizations opt to have a site request process or a form that a user fills out to define why they need a site, and for people to look at that request and make sure that there isn't a site that already exists that serves that business purpose. So site request process can be built in, and that can be automated with a workflow. If you're using social technologies, whether that's Yammer or Citrion or built-in SharePoint Social, a lot of organizations have concerns about social, and therefore, it's a good candidate to have governance policies associated with it. So there's a lot of information about social in terms of what you can and can't use social for. It may define the policies for when you want to set up a social community or for a particular area of your business. So that defines what social is and how it's used by the business. One of the great features of SharePoint is process automation through workflow. So because you're customizing SharePoint with workflows, it's really important to make sure that you have that information documented so that those customizations can be supported and maintained as the business evolves. So workflow process and lifecycle are defined here. And that also provides you with a library for storing the customization. So there's actually a library in there for your specifications for your workflows. There's a chain. Awesome. So here you go. So, this brings you in to talk about how to write a functional specification for your workflow. It also defines workflow terminology. You can't assume that all the users in the business understand what workflow is or the different terms and phrases that are used. So we put a quick sort of like an FAQ on workflow terminology there. There's a couple of links there for change management and communication plan. So when new features are going to be launched, how are we going to communicate that information? You can also put a calendar there that tells you when certain features or functions are going to be launched inside of SharePoint. If you have a defined IA for information architecture in SharePoint, both for metadata and your site structure, that information and documentation can be managed and maintained on the link there. A really important one, and one that we're really happy about, is the Site Administrator Toolkit. So a site administrator in SharePoint is one of your most important specialists, and they really own and maintain team sites. But they need a lot of support as well. Even though they're supporting a group of users, knowing when to do certain things like creating subsites, when to build lists and libraries, how to manage information through metadata, those are all things that users need they need to be reminded of how to do that job effectively. So we created a great resource there for site administrators and get that help and support they need without having to reach out to a person. And of course, we have some libraries and lists here that define the specific SharePoint policies and roles for your organization, any reference documents, if you have any legacy references, those can be stored there. So we have libraries and lists for storing specific content related to your governance strategy as well. So that's the site in a nutshell. Thank you, Simeon, for jumping around and showing some of that stuff as we went through it.
Yeah, you bet. This is, I just have to say, in all of the consulting work I've done in my sort of before Content Panda life, seeing this, working with a team like Synergy to come in and, starting with some really great information, but then, really talking to the business, partnering with the business users and the departments that will be using SharePoint, and making sure that these topics are all updated in the context of your business is really important. Governance is going to be different for every organization. Some organizations, they just want to have a great search engine. Some really find value in putting their engineering teams on social media and having them share ideas. And others are really about document management or records management for healthcare records or any sort of records that they want to manage for maybe legal reasons. So taking this approach, I think, really optimizes how people how to have that conversation with the business, have them included in building out the policies, best practices, and putting it in a format that's easy to consume and also to manage. So we're really excited about the work that Synergy is doing with companies. Heard some great get some great quotes and testimonials from people who've used this approach. So I can't recommend enough working with these guys and taking some of these patterns and applying them. Now, when we first started talking to Synergy about how they really roll out governance in a way that really drives user adoption instead of scares them back to email, we saw an opportunity for Content Panda to make that even better. Because even with all of this great investment in business relevant policies and best practices, we have an even more sort of breakthrough way of taking this content and putting it right where the user needs it. So I'm going to demonstrate a couple of use cases for, if you think about the users who are using various parts of your intranet or different sites for different business processes, looking for different outcomes, we can take some of what we think is useful and put it right in the hands of the users right where they need it. So I'm going to start with, let's look at some of the SharePoint policies to start off with. So if a user is kind of wondering, gosh, how should I name files? What's the best way to do this? And again, this could be different for every organization, especially if it's more legal or healthcare driven versus maybe engineering driven. Or maybe it's just more ad hoc, just more sort of brainstorming collaboration. Well, one of these that's, and I know Chris can speak to this, one of the most important things to get out there is some guidance around how to name files, make them discoverable, have some sort of consistency. I've seen a lot of document libraries that just people have dragged and dropped, and you see untitled.powerpoint and untitled.doc, and that's really not very useful. So I'm just going to, first of all, we'll open this up and take a look. And we think that, so you spend a little time modifying it, make sure it's in the context of your business. And then let's look how we can bring that right into the hands of the user. So in this case, we're going to assume that it's really helpful for people on our project side, people who are doing innovation and collaborating, to have that information at the fingertips. I'm going to go into one of our projects here. So now that we're on a project site, we have Content Panda installed here. That's this little cute panda face over here on the right. The number 17 underneath the panda face is the number of help and topics that are available to the elements to users on this particular page. So Content Panda's looked at the page and said, oh, I see that there are 17 items here. So if I turn on Content Panda, we light up those items on the page and put a little panda face peeking from behind it. Now, if you implement Content Panda, you can change these icons to be whatever is relevant for your business. So now you can see that the top-level navigation, we've got some content here to help people, understand how to edit and modify that top-level navigation. The thing that we really want to focus on here is document management. But before we get there, I want to show you what the end user's experience is when they're looking and poking around for information. So let's take a look at introduction, top link menu. When we first started building Content Panda and this platform for delivering content, we started writing content, but then we realized, we're not experts at that. We're technologists. We think we've really got a great way to deliver content, so we started looking around for the best content available for SharePoint across the globe. And that we landed with a company that we've now partnered with that has some really wonderful help content. We've taken those 1,000+ videos and topics, and we've embedded them right inside SharePoint. So I'm going to click on one to show you what the end user experience would be for just generic SharePoint training content. Now, you can take content, like Jason said earlier, he does a lot of SharePoint training. So if you go through their kind of offering to implement governance and you have some specific training, it looks like I ran into a problem in my demo. This is our demo and dev environment, so I apologize for that. Let's go to a different one, see if this works. Let's go to search. I know there's a lot of really great information for search. So let's do search for people. So I'm going to open this up. So what I was saying was, the stuff that Jason and Synergy create can also be embedded in this platform. So if you have specific training content for specific business processes that are relevant, you can plug those in here as well. So in this case, the end user, we open this article in a new tab. Instead of giving them a whole catalog of help content, we take them directly to the topic that they clicked on. So searching for people, there's a 5-step process. If the user wants to go a little bit deeper, they can go step-by-step into this. You can also put this on your governance site and have your own content here. We see people really enjoy watching videos. So I think videos now account for over 60% of internet traffic out there, so this is not a surprise. This particular video shows the user interface step-by-step. It's only 44 seconds long, which we've learned is about the attention span of people these days with all the information that's out there. And there's also full computer-based training, which tracks the user's progress, breaks things into modules, and has. So when we talked earlier about providing training, it is important. Making it accessible right where people need it is also as important, if not more important. Okay, so let's look at how we can add our governance policy to our document libraries. Now, I want to add it to all of my project document libraries. So let me show you how that works. Right now, we've got some training information, quizzes, document versioning, overview of document management, and a helpful video here that we pulled in from YouTube. Now, I'm going to go, Content Panda allows us to go into edit mode. I just add this parameter to the URL, and Content Panda turns orange, and it shows me all of the content that's registered on this page. Now, I'm going to open up this one here for this document library. I'll put this center screen. And I want to add a link for end users to this policy. So here's our SharePoint naming convention policy. I'll copy the URL for that and add a link. We're going to call this file naming policy for projects. Now, let's see, so I'm just going to add the URL here. So I'll paste that here, and I'm going to hit save. Now, just by doing this, I'm adding this particular link to all document libraries. But in this case, I want to really focus this on just the document libraries within our projects node, or path. So I'm just going to copy this out of the path, and I'm going to add it to the path limiter and hit save. I know this is probably a little bit complex, but I want to show you the result of this. So we've saved that. Now, I'm going to switch back out of edit mode, and let's take a look at the end user experience. So open up this item. And now we have file naming policies for projects. If I click on that again, it opens it up in a new tab so the user doesn't leave SharePoint. We show them that particular policy, and when they're done reading it, they're right back at SharePoint where they started. Turning off Content Panda is just as easy. We can either click on the number 17 or open the tab up and turn it on and off. All right, so now I've added it to the ACTUV project, but I added the path limiter. So let's go into another project. And let's go to a LASA project. And we'll turn Content Panda back on. Here's our document library. And when I open up this Content Panda, you can see that the file naming policy is available here for users as well. So if you're looking at your support request, your help desk tickets, it's a great place to learn what could be useful as you see multiple people asking the same questions. You know, how do I name files? Or you just have a standard you want to push out. When you identify those, you go into your governance site, you create a new policy or edit or update the one that's in place, and then you can go add a link to that to all of your document libraries across the board. Now the nice thing here is you never have to do that again. You can just keep that policy up to date as your policy changes or as users change their behavior. And when somebody clicks through that, they'll always get the latest information. Now, we had people ask us after they've implemented Content Panda, I want to have a policy for a document library, but a little bit differently. So in one use case that we heard of, somebody had a legal department. So let's go into the legal portal where we've got, instead of using metadata, which is typically a best practice for SharePoint document libraries, they really wanted to do it old school. They said, well, you know what, we want to have folders. Folders are really nice because they kind of explain what should be in each folder. And we also don't trust just Word documents. We want people to convert to PDF before they put them in here. And we want to make that easier for our end users because everybody comes in and says, gosh, how do I convert to PDF? So let's take a look here. First of all, I'm just going to turn on Content Panda to see what content's available on this page. We want to add something to this document library. So again, I'm just going to go into edit mode. Now, to tag content, we've tried to make it as easy as possible. And that's what you saw a little bit earlier when I was moving the mouse around. See this orange box as I move my mouse across items here. So what I do is I move the cursor to a section where it highlights exactly what I want to tag, and all I do is right-click. Now I have the ability to publish a new target. So let's say this is going to be corporate document library. And we're going to also make this only for the legal site. So I'm going to put the path limiter in for here because I don't want this to go to every document library in my area. And please follow, let's see here. Let's say, please convert to PDF before uploading. You'd think I would be a better typer after 17 years of working in SharePoint. And if you notice here, we don't have any other tabs or configuration options yet because we're just creating this initial target. So I hit save, and now I have the ability to go in here and add search terms. So if I want Content Panda to go hit Bing or Google, pass in some search terms, because a lot of times people just don't even know what to search for. We can bring back search results. In this case, we just want to add a video. So I'll click Add Video. I'm going to open a new tab. I know there's a video over here on YouTube. Let's go take a look. Convert to PDF. Let's say we find a nice little video here. This one's 5 minutes long. It explains how to convert from Word, Excel, and an Explorer, PowerPoint to PDF. Let's pause that. And with YouTube and a lot of sort of mature video services out there, you can embed videos right inside web pages. So this gives us the opportunity to leverage any video asset that's out there, whether it's on Vimeo, it's on your internal SharePoint site, or it's out on YouTube. You have a number of video platforms you can choose from. There's a new video tool in Office 365 that you could also use. They make it pretty easy. In this case, it's a pretty small user interface in that Content Panda dialog that pops up. So we're going to make this 320 by 180. Let's copy that markup, and I'm going to close this, and we'll say convert to PDF and paste that markup here and hit save. All right, so let's see what the user experience is like. So this is kind of the editor experience if you want to modify any of this content in Content Panda. Before I leave this page, I want you to notice a couple things. One, we have some help content here that came with Content Panda and our governance content and training content. But in our organization, we don't want to encourage people to change, let's say, the logo on every team site that's out there. So we've hidden that one. We've kind of unpublished it. But we want to make sure that as you're managing your policies and governance content in line or inside the interface, that you can turn some of those things off and have full control. The green pandas, these are ones that we've modified, and the orange pandas, let me refresh and update this page, are custom content. So any content that you've added. Now there's a lot of power between around being able to tag content. You can tag words, sections of pages, all kinds of really cool stuff here. So you can at any time come back here and update the settings for this particular item. All right, so now I'm putting on my paralegal hat and I'm coming over here to the legal site because I need to upload some terms and conditions for our SaaS offering. So when I turn on Content Panda, I can find out how to convert to PDF. Please convert PDF before uploading, and I can play this video right here in line. And if I want to, I can go to full screen or open it up in YouTube, and we play it, of course, without the advertisements. So I say, gosh, this is really helpful content for me. I'm just going to rate the content, make sure that whoever's managing this understands that, hey, this was really beneficial. All right, so I'm going to show just two more things, and then we're going to open up to Q&A. The reason I want to show these is because they're really important. A lot of organizations hand someone a SharePoint site. Maybe it's their first time, or maybe they've used SharePoint in the past, but now, as Jason mentioned, a user is now responsible for permissions and giving people access. So for that new SharePoint admin, I want to show you one of the least intuitive pages inside SharePoint, and that's our site settings page. So for that new SharePoint site owner or SharePoint site admin, they're going to take the next step from just a knowledge worker to somebody who's controlling the experience and supporting end users. You can see that we've got 40 items just on this page alone that have content available that really drive best practices and get somebody, again, instead of them having to go search the web and spend a couple hours in a day searching for good information, or trying to remember, where's that governance site, or calling IT, which everyone hates to do, they can just click on the Panda, they can turn on all of these items, and they can go watch videos right there. Sort of bridging the gap between the how do I question and moving on to the next step in their daily tasks. So really empowering the users, getting them exactly what they need right where they need it. Now, I want to show you this last use case, because this one is, I think, really, really helpful, and we get asked about it a lot. Here's one of, I've seen just about every company I've worked with use SharePoint for one really business-critical business process, and that's to share who has time off, who's on duty, and to request time off. Some people put a workflow behind this. Other people just set an alert on this calendar, the PTO calendar, but this is one of the most leveraged features of SharePoint. So what we've done is we've taken that PTO request and we've added a little bit of Content Panda information to it to make it a better experience. So as an end user, they can go click Request Personal Time Off. When this form loads, it's a typical SharePoint form. Some of this stuff is very intuitive, right? Title, that makes sense. Location, start and end time, these are cool. What if I don't know, how much time I have? Please follow the corporate vacation policy and click the Panda. So I go over here, turn on Content Panda, and now I can have a link here to our corporate vacation policy where I can look up how much time I have off, how much time I'll have over the next few months, etc. I can come back to the form. Now here's another one, okay? So since in this case, we need to find out what category of time off somebody's asking for, because we need to then go put that, sort of log that into our accounting system, which is tied to our HR system, which is then tied to how much time people have off. We need to ask our users, what kind of time off would you like to take? So for a new user who's maybe never filled out this form, this could be very confusing. PTO, ATO, I have no idea. So another opportunity to tag something right in line in a form and give somebody the opportunity to go load that content, put it right next to what they're doing, and compare what do these things mean and help them get past this process without, in a lot of cases, just not filling it out and it not getting tracked or lost in the process. So another great opportunity to get the right information right where people need it inside the SharePoint interface. So I think from here, that's kind of it from a demo perspective. I want to share one last critical statistic with you guys, and that's 0, the number of people who complain about having the information they want, where and when they need it. So, spending some time putting together that governance plan, one component of the governance plan being, and a really critical one, being a communication plan. Think if your communication plan could really be as simple as, when you need help, click on the Panda. So that could be one of the sort of primary pillars of your communication plan, is just making sure that the organization and all your users know that the Panda is there to help. We had one of our customers write us back and say, I used Content Panda a few times when we first implemented it, but now I just feel like a more confident user, not because I click on Panda a lot, because I know Panda's there and I can get to the information I need as soon as I have that moment of, gosh, how do I? And start asking those questions. So I want to thank everyone for joining us for this webinar. If you have any questions or have come up with any questions throughout this, just go ahead and click on the question box, fill in the text box, and submit that. Looks like we have a couple of questions already. So we'll get to those. The next, however long it takes here, however long you guys want to know more information, we'll go ahead and take. Okay. Okay, here's a good one. This is a good one, I think, for Synergy. Maybe Chris or Jason, you guys can talk about this. Looks like we covered end user governance. What about infrastructure governance? Is there a best practice around infrastructure governance?
Hey, Simeon, I can jump in and field this one. So the governance site and the policies there are for all users of SharePoint, whether you're an information worker or whether you're a specialist in the SharePoint space. So the governance site and the policies and documentation within that site, best practices, also cover things like infrastructure support and maintenance, backups and backup frequency, what the disaster recovery strategy is and how that pertains to your business continuity plan. So all the elements on the back end as far as the infrastructure is concerned are documented there, and if you're using the governance solution in Office 365, any specific policies that are defined within your admin site as well are also captured in the governance site, so it absolutely helps on the infrastructure side. So.
And one of the things that we've been able to do, sorry guys, jumping in here, one of the things we've been able to do with this governance solution is really come up with, much like Content Panda has done, getting some of the best information out there about the core best practices and the best way to approach things with SharePoint based on our industry expertise, but also then marry that up with the needs of the specific organization. So there's definitely some best practice surrounding, backup and restore and those sorts of things that we can share on our governance site, but then we also need to take that the next step and marry that up with what the organization needs for their practices. And then, of course, we were incredibly excited when we saw the Content Panda product, because then we can surface that and get that information to the users right in context.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I've got another question here. I have Office 365 and SharePoint on-premise. Will Content Panda work for both? It's a really good question, and we do get that asked a lot. We get asked, hey, will this work for hybrid? Will this work? Can I put Content Panda inside my environment? So just a quick explanation there. Content Panda is a SaaS product. So it's a web service that sits up in the cloud, and you would implement it on your SharePoint site. We've got a few different ways to do that with a WSP, just like a regular SharePoint solution, or a .app file where you can go into your solution gallery and upload an app and activate it. which works again for Office 365 or on-premise. And the settings, now it's kind of your choice. There's some flexibility here. If you want to, for example, tag your document library in Office 365, but also have that same content in your on-premise deployment, we can share that content database across multiple environments. Or if you have, if you're moving all of your project management sites up to Office 365, but keeping your, business intelligence dashboards internally, we can also support that. And finally, if you want to manage your own Content Panda deployment, we can come in and help you through a short engagement to get all of the services and the databases installed inside your network. So we've got some flexibility there. Let's see here. All right, if anybody has any other questions, I'm not seeing any more come in currently. I do want to mention that if you do have any questions in the future, or you know somebody inside your organization who could benefit from this conversation, or you'd like to take it a step further and get really sort of dig into your particular scenarios, this webinar will be available at contentpanda.com. Just click on events. The webinar will be there, and you can share it with any of your colleagues. But also feel free to shoot us an email to Synergy or Content Panda. The email address is on the screen, or go browse our website, and we'll get back to you very quickly. I'm happy to do a demo or sit down with you and have that kind of next steps conversation about how some of these approaches could help you with your business. We do offer trials as well, so if you just wanted to try it out, there's more than happy to have you guys take maybe your dev environment or just one SharePoint site and get it implemented, start playing with it, and share it with some of your users and get feedback. We find that that's a really great way to kind of introduce it to your organization and start thinking about how it can help you with your SharePoint strategy. So with that, I just want to thank everybody. I want to start by thanking Synergy. Thank you guys for joining us on this webinar today, and all of our attendees. Thank you for taking the time to join us in this webinar.
It's been a pleasure. Have a great day, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Well, thanks. Have a great day, and happy holidays. Bye now.
Happy holidays.
Mele Kalikimaka.